What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are driving a 2021 BMW M5, chassis code F90. I'm super excited to take this out on the road today. It's a very special car. This is probably going to be one of the fastest cars I've driven. It'll give the Camaro ZL1 a run for its money. Some specs. This has a 4.4 liter turbocharged V8 producing about 600 horsepower, paired with a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission and a very good all-wheel drive system. This M5 goes to 60 in just under 3 seconds, which is absolute insanity. Of course, being an M5, it also has all of the tech you could ever possibly want, a bunch of settings, very nice materials. The owner got this cool individual trim, which I really like on the dashboard. Let's go ahead and take this M5 out on the road and see how she drives. Driving the 2021 BMW M5, the F90. Some initial impressions. This thing feels so stately and so solid. Everything in this car just feels so well put together, built to such a high standard, the highest level of refinement. It's a really, really nice car. We're still letting the driveline get up the temp a little bit. We do get a real oil temp gauge in the gauge cluster, which is nice. You can actually see what it's doing. I think once we get around to that 210 mark, we'll be good to start romping on it. I have noticed too that the transmission uber short shifts. It's been keeping the engine at like 1100 RPM constantly. Some driver inputs. The gas pedal is okay. It is an electronic throttle pedal, but it has a decent weight to it, and it seems to be linear with power delivery and my foot motion, which is good. The brake is a little assisted, but it has a very good bite. I would say overall kind of what you would expect for a car like this. I will say, compared to the E39 we just hopped out of, it does feel larger. It doesn't communicate to you as well. As you would expect, it's a much larger car. And actually in size, this is pretty close to the E38 7 Series. And as far as refinement and driver's feedback goes, I would say it's kind of on a similar level. Maybe you're a little more insulated than that car, but it is a modern car. So I think now I just put it into manual mode by hitting a paddle. See if we get some RPMs in this thing, generate some heat. Get it up to temp quicker. I'm surprised just how quiet this thing is when driving around. So we just put it into M1 mode, which does a lot of various settings. It set it in there earlier. I'll throw them up on screen. Changes the suspension, the engine response, a few things around the car. So we'll try that out. It leaves traction control on, which we are probably going to leave on today because this is a lot of horsepower and we're on some sticky summer tires and it's like 56 degrees outside. I can already tell a huge difference in M1 and the induction noise that this thing makes. So this does have piped-in sound, which I know a lot of people don't like, but honestly, with how insulated these new cars are and how quiet everyone wants them to be, it's the only way for automotive manufacturers to really still give you that sense of there being an engine there. There's no free lunch. Man. Plenty of grip. The 8-speed automatic transmission is perfect for this engine. So unlike the F10 that came before this, that had a DCT and its automatic version, because this is a torque converter, you can actually treat this like a regular automatic, i.e. if you're at a stoplight, you can kind of let it creep forward. You don't have to worry about burning out clutches. The fluid isn't as specific. So overall, it was a good thing for general use of the car, honestly. There's no reason to have a DCT in a sports sedan that's getting driven mostly on the road. The DCT is a track transmission. Driving this around in manual mode is fun too. Gives you a little more control over the car. It has so much torque. I don't even think I've touched half throttle once yet in this test drive. Now our oil temp's starting to get up there where we want to see it. I also just realized you get a boost gauge. That's cool. Get a boost gauge in the big sports luxury sedan like you would in a little tuner car. Oh, when I'm editing this, I'm not gonna be able to take my eyes off that screen. Wow. Wow. This car will get you into trouble really fast. I think it's gonna be really hard for the video to translate how much thrust and how fast this car is. Man, it's quick. Holy smokes. That's quick. It's really quick. The brakes are good too, which is good. Very, very confidence-inspiring brakes. The steering, while it doesn't have the most amount of feedback to the driver, especially compared to old cars, it's still pretty sharp, which I do like, even in comfort mode. It is pretty responsive. The whole car is very responsive and instills a lot of confidence in the driver, but you kind of have to trust it. I'm happy to report in this car that BMW finally fixed their gas pedal. For so many years, starting from the E90 Gen or E60 5 Series, they had this weird gas pedal that wasn't linear. And in this car, they finally fixed it. The gas pedal feels really good. It makes sense with my foot and how much power I'm getting, and is generally just nice to use. It doesn't make me regret every time having to interact with the accelerator pedal. That is a lot of thrust at first. Killed my fun, Mr. Silverado. I wanted to go for it, but you blocked me. Not cool, man. Interesting, so when you have it in manual mode, it is a true manual mode. So I just put my foot down there, and it was in 5th gear. Even when I hit the kickdown switch, the transmission didn't downshift for me. I like that. So you really do get a lot of control over the car and what it's doing. Now, I think the F10 was the same way. I haven't driven one, but I've driven other DCTs from that era from BMW, and I think that's also how they are. But I'm glad to see they carried that over into this M5. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. This is the last V8 M5 as we know it. The newest one, the one that's coming after it, the G series, now has a hybrid motor. And look, I'm all for advancements, more power, better fuel economy when they make sense. But in this case, it doesn't. This M5 makes about 600 horsepower out of that V8. The newest one makes over 700, which is a big number. And it's cool, more power, sure. Now it makes as much as a Hellcat. That's awesome. The problem is, it's way more complicated, and it's so much heavier. I'm gonna flash the weight figures up on screen, and because of that, even though it is 700 horsepower, it's no faster than this car, and it doesn't get any better fuel economy. So that really begs the question when it comes to performance, if they're the same, why wouldn't you get this one? A lot of people prefer the way this one looks. This one is more true to form for BMW if you're going off their classic styling language. And I think that this is going to be kind of the end of an era for BMW. I think we're gonna look back at this M5 and think, okay, this is kind of the sweet spot and it was perfect, but it wasn't redundant or too extra yet. Wow. car is dangerous. It encourages you to go faster and faster and faster, and it'll do it. I think this car is a top speed when de-restricted of 190 miles an hour. I have no problem believing this car would do that every day of the week. It is so fast. That transmission is also so fast. This is the sweet spot of M5s in my opinion. We finally got everything perfected. The car drives so well. We went back to the 8-speed Slushmatic, torque converter automatic, which is better than the DCT. It's smoother, less clunky. It's a more refined driving experience. It's better. Went back to that. You get more power than you do in the F10. I actually like the way this looks a little more in the F10. I think this is a little more stately. The grille is big, but it's not as big as some of the other newer ones. And it sort of works with the body lines of the car. It looks very stately. You see this rolling up, you're like, ooh, somebody important has arrived. That's what this car speaks to me. And driving it, I have to say, this is just such an incredible driving experience. Everything you've ever driven, this is faster, more refined, better. It just somehow does it amazingly. You could say a Dodge Demon has more horsepower than this thing. It does. I rode in a Hellcat, which the owner also owns. But nothing is quite like this car. I also forgot to mention, you activate and deactivate manual mode by pulling both paddles back towards you. Just kind of a cool feature. Wow. Not only is it fast, but it puts down the power so smoothly. I kind of got a rolling start there. I didn't want to just flat out off the line the first time I ever fully accelerate in this car, that low gear. The car, totally fine. It's refined, counts for itself. Doesn't complain, doesn't put up a fuss, doesn't give you any extra noise that's unnecessary. The car just does it. It does what you ask it to do. Doesn't even think twice. And that's what really makes a BMW M5 one of the best cars. Those shifts throw you back too. Holy smokes. That guy almost ran a red light. Nice. Michigan drivers, man, you can never be too careful. I don't know what exactly changes in M2 versus M1 mode, but this thing really wakes up. It becomes like a ferocious beast. Like, it wants to bite your head off. It'll let the tires get a little bit loose too. Of course, not that you can really have an accident in this car, because it has all-wheel drive and so much tire. Knock on, well, I say usually knock on cheap plastic, but we don't have any in here. Knock on nice piano black plastic, and knock on nice BMW individual wood trim. In M2 mode, I also noticed the steering gets a little heavier. Although this is just how the owner has it set up. You can set any of these buttons, the M1 and M2 button, to do whatever you want them to, which is one of the cool things about this car. Yes, it does have a ton of settings and sub-settings for those settings and even more settings. But you can customize it to drive exactly how you want it to drive. You can dial it in to your personal preference, which is cool. I mean, there is something to be said about the car coming ready-made for you out of the factory, but it is also nice for people who like to mess around and tinker with things to have the option to. We are finished with our test drive of the F90 BMW M5. The M5 has always stood for one thing, and that is to be the best. It can go like a Ferrari, it can haul you and your whole family and carry your luggage, and it can do it in absolute comfort. And this one fulfills the promise of what it means for a car to be a BMW M5. Let's go ahead and give the 2021 BMW M5 a score. It scores here on our list. The F90 M5 scores higher than both older M5s. Interestingly, it barely has an edge on the E39. This is a lot more car than the E39 M5, but it's a slightly worse value since it is a new, actively depreciating luxury sedan. Reliability is also uncertain, but you can be sure that the poor examples will not fare well to time, such is the case with any world-beating super sedan. Should you buy it? The F90 M5 is an engineering marvel. Everything on this car is refined and perfect. The M5 isn't the same semi-connected backroad fun mid-size luxury sedan it used to be. This is a large car, the size of BMW's own 7 Series from 25 years ago. If you go on expecting that modern equivalent of luxury, the driving experience is exactly what you would expect. Just turn the speed dial up to insanity. With values dropping on these M5s, they're starting to become a bargain since they are not too old yet. Time will tell where the M5 lineage is headed, but I can say for certain that the F90 is the supercar beating sports sedan it was meant to be.